Hello everyone and welcome to this video. Today I'm going to be showing you something that's completely changed the way I debug and program in JavaScript in general. That is called template literals. To briefly sum up what these are, it's basically a way to more easily include variables and JavaScript code within a string and combine strings and variables together. Normally when you do something like an alert, I would teach the way that you have your double or single quotes with a string, and then you would say add a variable. And sometimes, depending on the type of variable, you would even have to stringify that variable. But there's another way using the backtick character in order to easily create one line that controls both strings and variables and allows you to easily combine them. And if we run this example here, these two alerts, which use two different methods, are going to give us the same exact value. However, with template literals, we can save a lot of time, organization, and just do a lot more with them. So this is going to be a pretty quick tutorial, so we're going to hop right in. But before we do, of course, make sure you check out all the links down below for GitHub, AE scripts, and the like. Subscribe and like the video if you enjoyed it, and let's just jump in. So template literals, first I should mention, are not going to work if you're creating scripts using ECMAScript 3, for example. This was introduced in ECMAScript 5, which means that this will be something that you'll more likely use if you're creating extensions. I'm going to go ahead and set up our extension testing template here. And inside of our initialization function, I'm just going to send whatever I want to be a variable. In this case, instead of a string, let's use like an object, right? So we can say, maybe we have a property called name. My name is Nate. And maybe we can do a job, tutorial man. All right, and we're going to pass this into our init function as an object. Normally, if we want to see this, of course, we would just say alert object. And of course, in this case, it's going to alert the object itself. So what we may want to do is say json.stringify our object. And now view that. You can see it's going to show us the stringified version of this particular object or argument. Now let's say we wanted to use a prefix or a suffix string, or even both. So what we'd want to do then is add like a plus. And what are we going to want to add? Well, it will either need to be in single or double quotes, and we can say here is line 20, and then maybe if we want to add something after, we'd add more pluses and say, and that is the object. So we can save and run this, and what it's going to do is show here's line 20, insert our stringified object, and that is the object. And as you can imagine, if you wanted to continually add more and more of these together, you're just going to keep adding more and more spaces. So if you had other variables you wanted to add, say random letters here to represent our variables, it can then become very complicated and convoluted. So what template literals are going to allow us to do is much more easily manage this and not have to worry about adding strings and adding integers, adding variables, and all of that. So to do this exact same thing with the string literal, it's very easy. We're just going to create an alert, and we're going to use the backticks. These are these little symbols here. You can zoom in to show you. These are these little symbols here. I zoomed in just to show you. Not a single quote, it's not a double quote, it is a backtick. And if you're familiar with embedding things like on Discord, you can usually use 3 of these, just like that, to embed code within that. But we're just going to be using 2 in this case to indicate that we're using these backticks. So now with backticks, we don't have to use any pluses or any minuses. We can just add all of this stuff and stuff it together. So to first, if you want to use a variable, we need to use $sign and parentheses. This sort of indicates that we're going to be using JavaScript from within our actual code. So if you wanted to, you don't even have to use a variable for this. You could literally say 1 + 1, and it's going to treat that like a bit of JavaScript that we can run. So now if we run this, we're actually going to get the result 2, because we're telling it this little section inside of here is actually JavaScript based on our JavaScript structure and our file. And of course, we can also, instead of just saying 1 + 1, we can bring in our object. And just like before, it's going to show us the object like that. But like I said before, we need to stringify it. So after stringifying it, we now get the same result as before with our object there. And now, if we want to start concatenating or adding things together in this matter, No longer do we have to break out of our ticks or our quotes. We can simply use strings. We can simply type. As you can see, it highlights it differently because the JavaScript is going to be denoted by the $sign and parentheses, and everything else is going to basically be strings. So if we wanted to say, here is line 20, just like that, we'll add a space. And as we refresh that, you can see it's going to appear exactly like the previous line, but much easier. And same thing, if we want to add something to the end, we don't have to break out and break back into our string. We can just say, and that is the object. Once again, this is going to make it super easy to bring everything together, and for much more complex debugging or even just code in general, this is going to be super useful. As a last example, let's just say we have variables a, b, c, and d, and we'll need to define these here. We'll just give a couple of random integers. And then instead of just adding these, let's go ahead and and this is the object, we can add another sort of JavaScript descriptor here. And whatever we want to do with these, we could say a plus b plus c plus d, and that's going to give us the result of those all put into this one little bit here, or you can really do whatever you want. And the beauty of this is it's just JavaScript. So if we wanted to, we could create a separate function called multiply, and maybe multiply will also require 3 arguments, and we're going to return a times b times c times d. And now all we have to do is say, inside of here, we're going to run the multiply function and provide it with the proper arguments. And now you can see it's going to run that function, multiply a, b, c, and d, and return the value, putting it back into our alerts inside of our backticks. So as you can see, this gives you a lot more customization to be able to just run JavaScript code in general. You can just insert variables, you can insert functions and get the return, and you don't have to add together things like different strings and different variables, stringifying them and worrying about all that. And like I said, I use this primarily for things like alerts, but I also use it for other main JavaScript coding sections. For example, you can put entire HTML or code bases inside of a template literal like this, and then insert variables like this to replace parts of your code. So if you want to do like auto code generation or things like that, this works really great as well. But I'm sure you guys have lots of interesting and creative ideas on how to apply this. I hope you enjoyed this video on template literals, something that's really changed the way I write JavaScript. And as a reminder, this is for ECMAScript 5 and above, so not going to work for scripting in general unless you're using something like some kind of converted type script, but this will work great for your extensions and any other JavaScript projects. Thanks for watching, everyone, and we'll see you next time.